Okay, so I'm sure you've all used Zoom enough and you know exactly where things are, but this is just a reminder to make sure that you're muted if you're not talking. But we do welcome you to interrupt us at any point. So if you want to come off mute and share something, please go ahead. Just make sure that you share where you're from, what PCN or clinic you're calling from, just so we have an idea of who you are. And as I said before, we love to always see people's faces, but we understand if you can't be on camera right now. Chat is also always open, so I'll be keeping an eye on that as well if there's something you want to say in there. And we always love reactions. So we talk a lot about, celebrating small wins and that kind of thing. So that's something we love to do here is if you love something that someone's saying, you can clap your hands for them or put a heart up or something like that. So, okay. And this is how to use the chat. I'm sure you all know how to use it by now, so I won't stay on this slide. And so as we said in the meeting invite, the topics that we're covering today are EMR transition challenges, and we'll do a little bit of a follow-up on CBD risk searches, which I know you covered last time. It'll be a pretty quick follow-up just because there's some things that I would need from you if we wanted to do a more in-depth follow-up, but we'll talk about that once we get there. And so land acknowledgments, we always want to recognize that we are webcasting from and to many different parts of Alberta today. And the province of Alberta is located on Treaty 6, Treaty 7, and Treaty 8 territories, and is a traditional meeting ground and home for many Indigenous peoples. And always, we are recording the webinar today, so I do apologize. I haven't had a chance to put up the recordings from the last two webinars, but I will do that this week, and I'll also make sure I upload this webinar as well. And so the purpose, so just know that if you share anything in this webinar, it will be recorded and posted on our Wolf EMR YouTube channel. So if there's anything that you think maybe is a private matter, you can always reach out to me privately. Okay, and hopefully all of you know Kara and I right now, but we are actually, there are some changes happening in terms of the leadership for this group. So unfortunately, and this is very unfortunate because I loved working with Kara. She was always willing to help with everything, and I'm sure you saw that in the Wolf User Group meetings as well. So unfortunately, she's having to step down just because of other like personal circumstances right now. So that's the sad news. And so on the next slide here, we'll do a little bit of a send off for her because unfortunately she couldn't join today. But if you can think right now of any little messages that you might want to send her or thank yous, we'll put a slide together for her that we can send her. The other change that's happening, so we have Christine Doe here today. So Christine, I don't know if you want to quickly wave. Hi. So Christine is fairly new to our ACT team. So she's a consultant. And so her and I are working closely on the Wolf EMR user group and then soon to be the CHR user group as well. And so I will actually be going on mat leave starting in April. And so we're bringing Christine in to take over, and Christine is awesome. So very excited to have her on board. But we'll slowly be transitioning things over to her. So that's what's happening. Thanks, Manda. We're expecting twin girls. So it'll be, we'll be busy for a little while.
I had to come off mute for that. Yes, good stuff.
Yeah, thanks, Rhonda. So that's also partly why I was away. I just had, just could not work for a couple months there. So happy to be back. But yeah, so Christine, do you want to do a quick introduction to yourself, maybe a little bit of your background?
Yeah, of course. So hi, everyone. And yeah, congratulations to Sarah Joy. That's amazing news. But as Sarah Joy was saying, I'm Christine, and I'm fairly new to the AMA ACT team. I am a consultant, and my previous role was actually at the Edmonton West PCN in quality improvement. So I had a role very similar to the practice facilitator role. And these next few months are pretty exciting for me because I'm finishing up my Master of Business Administration at the University of Alberta. But yeah, I'd like to thank Sarah Joy for including me in this user group, and I'm really looking forward to getting to know all of you. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Christine. And we're so lucky to have you on board and do this transition. So you'll see over the next couple meetings, Christine will take over more and more of the meeting. So, and I know she'll do a fantastic job. So you are in great hands. So with that, I want you to get your annotate ready. So if you can go to your view options, click annotate, and then use the text option here. You can also use stamps. We're happy to send Kara some hearts and stars and all of that fun stuff too. But take out your text here. And on the next slide, we'll leave it open here. If you just want to send a message to Kara, just thanking her, it could be a simple like, thank you so much for all you do. I'll share this with her after the fact. I think she deserves a send off, and yeah, it's too bad she's not here today. So. And if you're unable to access Annotate, you can always use the chat, and I'll make sure that your message gets on the board as well. Okay, perfect. Thanks, everyone. That's lovely. Okay, so I will clear all drawings. Perfect. And we're going to do another annotate activity here. So if you could just get your stamps ready. Yes, so it looks like everyone has their stamps, so that's perfect. Oh, and I'm putting more stamps on there too, so let's not do that. Okay, so on that next slide, so normally we would ask you what your role is, but today we're going to do it a little bit differently. So if you could just stamp on there where you're from. So this is divided into the different zones. So if you don't know exactly, there's the North Zone, Edmonton, Central, Calgary, and South zones. And Michelle, are you from Saskatchewan? We always welcome people from out of province, so that's awesome if you are.
No, I'm in Calgary here.
Oh, okay. Awesome. So lots of people from Calgary. We got a few from North, not very many from Central. I do know we have more from Central than that, though, just from the participants list. So maybe you haven't had a chance to get your annotate out. A couple from Edmonton and quite a few from North Zone as well. So that's awesome. Thank you so much for joining today. Hopefully you get lots of value out of today.
Sorry, it's other Michelle, and yeah. I was trying to get my stuff up there. I'm joining from the Crow's Nest Pass. So I was the one who was putting it in Saskatchewan because I was trying to move the map because I can't even see Crow's Nest Pass on there.
Oh, so, yeah. Yeah, you're right. The map is probably, it's shortened, right? It doesn't quite go down far enough. So
sorry, no, and I've just got a new computer, so I don't have all my Zoom stuff on there about where I'm from. So Chinook PCN, Crow's Nest Pass, Crow's Nest Medical Clinic.
Beautiful. Thanks, Michelle. So happy for you so happy that you're here with us today. So that's fantastic. And yes, I will have to get a better map. Perfect. So hopefully we hear from all the zones today. We know that each zone has a little, and even each clinic or PCN has a little bit different context. So we'd love to hear from all of you. Okay, so both sunsetting updates. So this slide hasn't started or hasn't changed much over the last few months. It's more of just a reminder that if you or any of your clinics are asking about how do we get more information on CHR, they can always contact that healthsales@telus.com email address for more information. And the other thing is, so I did mention CHR, and I know Becky, you asked a question about that in the chat as well. I was just waiting till we got to this slide. And so Christine and I will be launching the CHR group. We're hoping in the next couple months. February might be ambitious, but hopefully by March. So just a show of hands, raise your hand if you are interested in joining that user group or have already joined that user group. Awesome. Seeing, yeah, lots of hands there. That's fantastic. Awesome. So lots of interest. So I know last year we had, so thank you. Yeah, you can all lower your hands. So we didn't have all that much interest just because I know CHR was still doing a lot of testing, but it looks like we have a lot more people interested. So we'll get that user group going as soon as we can, and we'll keep you guys updated as to when that is starting. And hopefully you've all had a chance to join the CHR user group. If not, I'll just paste the link to the registration form in the chat. So make sure you use that link to make sure that you're signed up for the CHR user group as well. Okay, so there are some updates in terms of CHR confirmation. So we have 10 clinics that are using CHR right now. So that's a huge jump from before. And they have various degrees of integration. So we know that CHR is not 100% integrated with the rest of the healthcare system, but they are well on their way. And CII, CPAR, and as well as e-notifications are also, they're all working in 3 of the clinics that are doing beta testing. So that is really promising for any of you guys that are switching to CHR. And they are now certified for e-delivery. So lots of progress on the confirmation, or on confirmation, I guess. And they are meeting again on January 20th. So we'll have even more updates then, and I'll make sure to send those out to the group as well, so you all know what's going on. And again, I'm just putting Andrea and Susie's emails at the bottom there. So if you do have any questions specific to CHR, you can talk to them. They're part of the sales team, and so they know CHR really well. So they're great contacts for you to use. Okay, and a reminder, so we are now in the last year of Wolf. So one question that I want to ask you is, how many of you still have clinics or are still undecided on which EMR you are switching to?
Like we know which one we're switching to, but there's several clinics in the PCN that are still,
yeah, so if you work with any,
undecided.
Yeah. So if you know of any clinics, and I'm saying like you yourself, because we have people on the call that are calling specifically from clinics, but if your clinic or any of the clinics that you work with have not yet decided which EMR they're transitioning to, just put a quick hand up just so I have an idea. Yeah, so Cheryl, Becky, Amanda. Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Oh, Sarah Joy, I just wanted to mention, I think the biggest reason why some of our clinics are still having issues deciding is they're having trouble making contact with Wolf or with CHR to get demos so that they can actually have a look at the EMR. I don't know if anybody else is experiencing that same issue, but again, we have multiple clinics that are undecided because of that.
Yeah, and I've definitely heard that from other people as well. And so it's actually, some clinics have decided like, we don't want to go with TELUS because they're not being responsive. Or they just say, you know what, we'll go with MedAccess or CHR. It doesn't matter. We don't need a demo, which is not the best way to make a decision. But yeah, has anyone else run into that?
Well, they offer demos like at the drop of a hat. If you go to use their chat to like try to ask them a question, it automatically fills in, would you like a demo, into that. So like, I'm not sure how people aren't, maybe they're not responding when you say yes, you want a demo, but like, I don't know. They offer them at the drop of a hat, I've noticed.
I worked quite closely with Susie actually in one of my clinics that wanted to do a demo for MedAccess and for CHR. So I worked with her for both of those. And it was a matter of finding times that worked with the clinic and Susie. That was the issue. So it took us a while of back and forth before they finally had a date that worked for them. That's and good. Susie did not reply every single time right away, of course. So it's just that, I think.
Yeah. So maybe I'll put Susie's email just in the chat here so you guys can reach out to her. That's good to know, Tara. I mean, at least you were able to get the demos, even though it was probably a little bit difficult. And thanks, Michelle. Yeah, it looks like your clinic is, oh, good, go live in April. So yeah, I've heard a few go live dates in April, so that's exciting. Yeah, that's good to know, Amanda. Absolutely. We can definitely go over that. Okay, so if you are having issues, say you reach out to Susie or someone else at TELUS and you're having issues getting a demo, send me an email because we have a team that works closely with TELUS. So that would be good information for them to have because, you know, then clinics might decide not to go with them. So yeah, just reach out to me and I'll see what I can do. Yeah, and that's a really good question, Teresa. So yeah, I don't know, Michelle, if you know when the contract was signed to switch to CHR.
Probably easier for me to just talk than type. Sorry, I'm still trying to get my Zoom set up. So we actually signed in 2020 to go to MedAccess. So we were going to MedAccess in 2021. And then in 2020, TELUS got back to us to say they wanted to offer us a chance at CHR. And, you know, there was that whole period of time in there. And believe me, I empathize with everything everybody says about TELUS because Susie and Andrea, probably if you mention my name, they will run away screaming. So, because they're not that responsive. They're, you know, they're trying to sell a product, but they're not that responsive. Anyhow, so we agreed to switch from after a demo. That's how we got the demo. But that was like over a year ago. It was almost 2 years ago. And then we waited all through 2022. And then finally they got back to us and said, yeah, we can give you an implementation in the first quarter of 2023. So we picked April. So that's how we got it. And so we signed our contract literally, it'll be 3 years ago by the time it was January, February 2020 that we signed that contract.
Oh, wow.
But that was the MedAccess contract. So, and then, yeah, so that's, but this time, so we signed the contract for CHR in 2021. I want to say June, about June 2021. And we're implementing in April 2023. So what does that tell you?
Wow.
So I don't know why I guess it's just everything takes more time than you think, but I don't know why they picked a sunset date of December 2023. And they're really encouraging everybody, come and talk to us. But literally, I have a hard time talking to them and a contract signed and money's changed hands. So I think they just think they're going to implement it without extra people. Do you know what I mean? Like they just don't have the staff on the ground to do it. So.
Yeah. And I've heard the same, Michelle, no matter how many times we go back to them and say, like, you know, your customers are complaining about your responsiveness, there isn't much movement. So yeah, I think you're bang on.
Yeah. And we're sticking with them because there's too much money in, and the clinic I'm with has been with them since, I want to say, 2006, 2007 on Wolf, like as the first year it came out. And so it's virtually going to be free for us to transition. And that is why we're staying with it, right? The MedAccess would have been free, like in terms of hardware and software. So that's why we're doing it.
Yeah, and that's probably what TELUS is banking on as well, right? Getting a lot of people switching that because of that. So yeah, that's great information, Michelle. And it would be interesting if other people choose to go with CHR to know what the timelines are for actually transitioning, to know how long it's taking if you sign a contract now.
Yeah, I don't know, but Char, I see Char's from my CPCN. She's my analyst. So Char, you can add us April 3rd. Crow's Nest Medical Clinic.
I got it. I didn't mention you because you already talked, so I figured we were good.
Thank you.
Awesome. And I see a comment from Robin in the chat just about transitioning to Kiro and advice on that. So Robin, what I can do is we do have a recording. We did a session, I think it was early 2022, where we had one person talk about their transition from Wolf to a Kiro. So what I can do is send you the link to that recording, and then I can also put you in touch with that person if you have specific questions as well. So perfect. Okay. And there is another one about someone going to, so Joan going to Ava. So Joan, have you had a chance to sign up for the EMR user group, the Ava one? And you might be having trouble. Oh, yes. Okay. Yes. So perfect. So I was going to cover this later and we will cover it later, but they do have their first EMR user group meeting on February 1st. So I'm sure you have the invite for that. What I would suggest is in that meeting, maybe suggesting, a session on tips for transitioning to Ava from Wolf. What you could also do is post in their discussion board, because I'm sure there's other people in the same boat as you or people who have already transitioned that could definitely help you out in that group. Yeah, no problem, Joan, of course.
Sarah Joy, I have one clinic, the one who moved in October, I think it was now, from Wolf to CHR. And after their transition, we asked them to kind of present to all of our clinics who are thinking of switching. And basically they said, talk to like your planning meetings, make sure you're covering everything, not just super basic info and how training works and what that looks like, because there were a lot of things that they did not talk about that they really needed to plan for. And I think had they done it better, it would have gone over smoother. It also felt like to them, the people who were training maybe didn't know how the EMR worked. And I attended about half the training sessions because they had invited me, and they weren't that helpful, in my opinion. They were a recap of the videos online that anyone can watch. If I can find the link, I will put it in the chat. And so I think they're maybe looking at their training practices because they weren't super helpful. They were available during the day after they went live, but they weren't in the clinic. And so I think they also suggested having someone in the clinic with you so you can actually show them what's going on and what your workflow normally looks like. There wasn't much discussion of workflows before.
Yeah, that's too bad. And hopefully that is something they're looking at, but I'll make sure I relay that back to our team that's working with CHR, just so they know that's a barrier for clinics, because absolutely that training is essential. Yeah. And actually, Char, you didn't record that session, hey, with that clinic?
I don't think we did, no, because they didn't, they did confirm everything they were saying was fine. And this specific clinic ended up changing. They have a specific name for basically their like lead on this from CHR, customer service manager or something like that. I can't remember. And they ended up changing it because their original one said, we're done, you're trained, go and figure it out. And they weren't taking emails from them.
Oh, wow.
So not good either. So they have a new one who's much more receptive. And I think that has been better. Oh, yes, Michelle, I think that's the right link. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. That's terrible, but it's good to know if a clinic's running into that, make sure that you get someone else that can help.
Yeah. And I think all they did was just advocate for themselves and say, no, we need someone else. So thanks. Because we're not, you were supposed to do all of your requests through the CHR. Like there's a chat function basically built into the EMR. And that's what they want you to do all of your support. There's no phone number unless you lose connection, basically. So.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's really helpful to know. Yeah. And Becky. I see you trying to say something.
There we go. I was trying to get my screen. What was I going to say now? Shoot. What were you just saying, Char?
The chat function. They want.
Oh, yeah. So I have used it. It's good. Like The only thing that does suck is when if they need to do a screen share with you, like, you know how in other things you're able to kind of like work on your own like screen while they're doing stuff, like you can't, like they definitely take charge of like your entire screen, so you can't even like, you know, look at your email while they're like on the phone doing stuff. So like it's good in that you don't have to be on a phone also, you're just chatting, but then you sometimes lose the window because you send a message and then you don't, you know, then you get working on something else and then it turns out they've sent a message back. So it is different, but it's, you know, I think it's a little bit more responsive than on the phone. The overall experience was a little better, I would say.
Yeah, that's all really good to know. Because yeah, CHR is so new, but it's definitely things like that you don't know, right, as you're signing up for it. So I'm wondering if we have a first CHR user group meeting in March, would it be helpful just to have an open forum for people? Because I'm sure a lot of people from there are either waiting to transition or have transitioned. So maybe that can be a good forum for people to ask questions if they are transitioning, and then people to share their experiences as well if they already have transitioned. Okay, I'm seeing some nods. So perfect. So Christine and I will take that away and we'll put that together. Okay, anything else on transitioning EMRs? We're going to go into some specific questions about it as well. Yeah, that would be great, Char. Thank you.
I don't know when the best time is for me to say this, but we have discovered that there is absolutely no templates for WCB in CHR.
Yeah.
So
during the training,
tell me what you know, Shar.
You have to go and just go the old school way from when WCB went to online forms and submit there. So I don't know if they're working on that one. That just came up briefly.
They are working on it. Sorry, they are working on it, but WCB is not integrated as of yet, but they are working on it. And actually, because we're in the southwest corner of the province, that's probably a plus for us, because I have found the because we have WorkSafe BC as well, which we submit directly to WorkSafe BC. And for those of us that weren't around when you old schooled it and submitted directly to WCB, it seems to be a smoother process and works better than doing it through Wolf. So we're not really too worried about that. And they could not give me a timeline for when they're going to have the WCB integrated, but it's not now.
So Michelle, do you guys do you just put like a general chart note, like WCB appointment was conducted, see WCB kind of thing, and then you just chart everything on the WCB site? Is that kind of how you do it?
Yes, and our physicians submit their own. So quite often, so if they see someone in Emerge, or sometimes even from within the clinic, they'll just go to the WCB website and submit it. So it's a bit of a wash right now for us anyway. And for WCBC, WSBC, WorkSafe BC, it's sorry, my phone was going off in the other direction. It's a little bit different again, but we're not looking at that as a negative. It'll just make it easier for us to clean that up, because we got a lot of leftover stuff with WCB. So yeah, so that's what right now we're still using WCB in Wolf, but we're not too worried about not using it in CHR. That could be the optimism of the blind, but we're fingers crossed.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. That's really good to know. So I'm seeing a lot of value for having these discussions within the CHR user group. We'll definitely have to have some discussions around what processes are you using, what workarounds, those kinds of things. So if there are any other specific things that you're finding, like the lack of WCB forms in the EMR, definitely post on the discussion board, the CHR user group discussion board. And if I see anything in there, because I know you're not getting notified every time those discussion posts are put on there. If I see anything of high value, I'll make sure that those get disseminated to the rest of the group so you guys can help each other out there. And then we'll make sure when we start the CHR user group meetings, we'll make sure we'll leave lots of room for discussion about those things there as well. So yeah, thank you everyone. And hopefully that's valuable for anyone who's still looking to switch EMRs or unsure or switching to CHR. Yes, Char.
I thought I would mention two more things. So
yeah,
the analytics are fairly important because that's what I'm likely going to be using all the time. And the analytics isn't amazing. It's not great, but I have been in contact with someone who's been very receptive and open and actually asked me to give them everything that I want to export from the EMR, and they are working on it. So that was nice and good that they were willing to work with us. Obviously, we're trying to get the same things for anyone who might be going from our network. I haven't heard back from them since I sent in the last version. They just had a few questions on things. The other thing that I heard is there is a clinic, and I think it's Red Deer, but I could be wrong, it's a PCN. They're being charged for analytics. I think the basic version, and I think it's a few $1,000s a month. And that was not in their contract initially, and it's not happening for our clinic here that I know of. So I hope everyone else kind of keeps an eye out for that as a hidden kind of charge. There's also some other charge for some kind of electronic faxing. And I was trying to find my notes from that CHR meeting we had with our clinics.
Yeah, so there is no internal faxing function on CHR. You have to buy it from another provider.
Is it SR Fax, Michelle?
Yes, it's SR Fax.
That's what I thought.
And I believe I have not picked yet, but it's going to be about, I want to say between $100 and $200 a month.
Okay.
For my clinic, for the number of physicians we have and whatever. But yeah, it's an external provider.
Yeah, and those are all good to consider when you're considering which EMR to switch to, is all of those pricing. Yeah, and I'm seeing Cheryl, you're saying the same with Ava. So yeah, I know some clinics are choosing not to go to Ava because there's no fixed price that you're signing up for with them. So it could change, right? And it's the same with all EMRs. There's those add-ons that you might need to pay for. So definitely encourage clinics to be as specific as possible when they're signing those contracts to find out exactly what those fees are. Yeah, and it's good to know about those specific charges.
Sure. Can I ask you what were you finding wasn't there with the analytics? Because I'm very interested in the analytics as well.
So I think one of my first questions was, we typically export lists for the entire panel of patients at that clinic. And then we match it to other data. And they said that I could look at every chart for every patient to find it, but there was no real way to get the data for, say, a PAP test, like the last PAP that was done out of the EMR. So that is something they are looking at, obviously. And they do have kind of a different way to record it, but you'd have to manually record every PAP that is done for every patient. And then you can export a list from that. So basically, they had told.
Do you mean that a PAP that was done outside of the EMR, you said? Any? Okay.
Yeah. So I've asked them if they can map how their PAPs are in the EMR, because I feel like they should be able to, especially if they're coming in, the results are coming electronically, and then use that as a way to have that date somehow exportable. But that is one of the things I haven't heard back on.
Thanks for getting on that. I'd be asking them the same question as soon as I got in.
And it was a lot of the same kind of similar things for that. They do have some dashboards built in the analytics portion of the EMR. And so there'll be like pie charts and stuff that you can use. I've been checking them to see if they're accurate. And I checked the blood pressure the other day and it was not. So it says like compliant or not compliant. So meaning, is it done in the last 12 months or not? And I think out of like 5 that I checked, 3 did not have a blood pressure and 3 did, saying that they were all complete. So that wasn't great either. But some of those dashboards that have been built are from Ontario. They're not either to our specifications for, say, at ASAP as well. The other thing I was thinking is you can't really build your own dashboard, which to me is like kind of mind blowing because that's a lot of what we do. Even working.
Do you have the standard analytics package?
Sorry,
You have the standard?
I think it is, but when we asked, there was no, like they didn't want to give us a different one. So I honestly don't know the difference. And there's no extra charge for this clinic. So not sure.
And I do see, Amanda, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I've also used the analytics in CHR. I mean, it was in the summer last year, but it's not very functional. If you add things like a date restriction on it, it comes back with nothing. So I couldn't search for patients. I could search for patients like with a blood pressure or with a result specifically, but I couldn't put a time frame on it. Therefore, I couldn't even pull a list of patients due either. Mm-hmm. 2 things quickly. So one, with the faxing, that was one of the issues that the clinic had pulled out of CHR last minute, was they were told that the faxing, they would be charged for incoming and outgoing pages, not faxes, but pages. And then that just costs them too much money. And the second was the transition is the login, that every time they log in, they would receive a security code through their email, which they have to verify every login. So when they go from one room to another, they're having to verify via their email their login information, which is incredibly disruptive to their time.
I think that's a setting.
Yeah,
it's a multi-factor authentication setting you can turn off, I believe.
Yes, because I don't have that when I log in.
Okay, that's good to know. I'll let them know. But yeah, one of the biggest thing for them was the faxing.
And do you guys know there's some questions in here about forms? So Wolf has smart forms, how those present in CHR.
So I've been going through all of our forms in Wolf, like organizing them, figuring out which ones we're going to need to map across, like just all that stuff. So yeah, you need a base PDF in order to build the bubbles that pull in the information, but you can't share them. Like I can't map a form and then like send it to a different clinic and they just like upload it. I could send them the base PDF, but they would have to like map all the bubbles.
Yeah, so that's good to know. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we do, like, I know we have a working group that's working with CHR or TELUS on all of these things because we need CHR to work with the patient's medical home, right? So that includes being able to pull patients due for screening, all of those pieces. So Char, do you think, like, are you making progress with CHR in terms of those, or do you think it would be useful for that working group to actually work with TELUS on those things?
I mean, perhaps. I haven't heard back, but I only sent it in a couple of days ago. So okay. I'm not entirely sure. It was nice that they met with us and were willing to meet with us again. And I guess we're responsive, but I have run into, and I know we're not talking about Ava, but it's come up a couple times. I have talked to Ava a few times about similar things like this, and they've been super helpful and responsive, and then I just never hear back from them.
Oh, interesting.
From last May for a few things. So I'm not sure, but I am hopeful. They seem like they want to help. So
yeah, I have the same sense about Ava, as they seem very eager to help, but it's too bad that you're also experiencing some gaps there in communication. So that's good to know. And yeah, this isn't specific to CHR. So if anyone has anything to add for transitioning to HealthQuest, Accuro, any of the other ones, this is the form to do so. So yeah, absolutely. So either way, what I'll do is talk to that working group that's working with TELUS and say, this is a really big gap that impacts, work towards the patient's medical home and actually patient care. So we'll see if we can get some progress there as well. And just for anyone who's unsure or who is transitioning to CHR or unsure if they want to or what EMR they're going to, these conversations are normal when an EMR is starting up, right? So there are going to be lots of glitches. So whether it's AVA or CHR, don't take it as a, oh my God, like I definitely don't want to switch to that EMR. There are definitely things you need to consider in terms of your clinic's context and the workflows that are important to you. So those pieces will vary by EMR, but don't take this as a, whoa, stay away from CHR or AVA. Hopefully we can get these things worked out.
Hey, Shar, can I ask you one more question since you guys are on it? How did you find that it automatically brought over kind of like all of the forms that you generally used? Was there any trouble with that? Did you have to fight with them? Were there a bunch of forms that you expected were there and they just weren't, or what?
I don't know for sure, because I don't really remember, like that doesn't super matter to me. Only I was concentrating mostly on the analytics and just the regular day-to-day. Like there's questions that we would ask the trainers and they're like, oh, I don't know, let's click on this button and see what happens. I don't know about forms though. It did seem like they had a pretty robust library. So I'm hoping, but it might be something. Do you have a clinic who's transitioning, or you guys yourself, this PCN is going?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, not officially yet, but yes.
I would maybe during your planning meetings, because they'll give you like a manager to help you kind of make everything, just plan for your transition. Make sure that's something you bring up. Ask them, like, see if you can provide them with a list of the forms you need to have, because you're going to need them and you can't be without them. You're not going back to paper. That doesn't make any sense at this point. So no. I would use that as a point. And I wonder if there will be some kind of joint or group advocating for all the things we that are basics for us. ASAP kind of reporting. And one of my coworkers here just said, do they have reminders, which is something, or like rules in Wolf? And I haven't seen anything that works similar to that either. So unfortunately. Yeah.
So all of those pieces, I would recommend putting all of that into the CHR discussion board, because we do have a team that, like I said, works with CHR. So those are all really important things to know, that clinics are needing these things, but they're not available. So definitely we can get that sent higher up. So hopefully we see some changes. Yeah. So I see we only have 15 minutes left. So this was awesome conversation, and we'll definitely have another meeting where we talk more about this, because I think this is useful for people to know and be aware of. So thank you. So actually, we're going to totally change topics here. So I'm just wondering about these Wolf user group meetings, because we do have now an Ava user group. We have a CHR user group starting up. I'm wondering, we were going to keep these meetings going until around June. I'm wondering what the appetite is to have meetings go until there. I know clinics will be on Wolf past that date. But in terms of ongoing support, I'm wondering how much there is a need for these meetings. We can still keep the discussion board open for any questions that people have, and you'll still be able to reach out to our team. But what's the sense, just if there are any brave souls out there saying, let's end in March, or let's keep going till June? What are the preferences?
I think it's good to keep it until the user groups that we need are available.
Okay.
I think so too.
Let's keep going, Teresa. Perfect. So maybe we'll keep going until March, and then we'll touch base again there to see then, because we should have the CHR and AVA user groups up and running by then. So we can touch base again and see where we're at that point. And yes, Michelle. So I don't know, Christine, if you have a link to the discussion boards or even Learn at AMA that you can put in the chat there. So Michelle, there is a bit of a navigation in there. If you have access to that Learn at AMA website, you should be able to get to the discussion boards from there. And I do have some slides later on that explain how to get there. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about EMR transition challenges, and I just want to remind you, I know you've seen these a billion times, but if clinics are struggling, we do have resources for them, right? So this EMR integration table. So this tells them which EMRs are available in Alberta, the big ones, and what they're conformed or not conformed with. The other one is this document here, transitioning to a new EMR. So this is a 3-pager that has lots of links to other resources on there and kind of walks clinics through all of the things that they should be considering as they're looking to transition. And then the other one is we have recordings of all of these sessions on our YouTube channel. So I encourage you to have a look there. I'll send you guys specific links to the ones that we did earlier last year, because those both tell us came to answer some of your questions about moving to MedAccess or CHR. And then we had a user group with people who had actually transitioned their clinics to a different EMR. So I'll send you links to those because they have some really good tips there. And I'll also include, thank you so much, Christine. Yeah, so that's the link to the discussion board for Wolf. And in there, you'll also find the discussion boards for CHR and AVA if you're signed up for those as well. And then I'll put all of the links to these resources here that I'm showing you, just so these can be good to send to clinics or even leverage, because I know clinics sometimes don't want, have time to read all of these things, but just some things for you to leverage when you're having conversations with clinics. Okay, so we've heard some of the challenges once you've chosen your EMR, right? And transitioning to that new EMR. And there will always be challenges. Some of the ones that were brought up today were really big ones that I'm hoping not every clinic has to deal with when they do transition. But are you running into challenges actually getting your clinics to decide what EMR to go to? Are there some clinics that you're just, not making any progress with? You're kind of concerned, are they going to be able to switch by the time Wolf sunsets? And what are those challenges that you're encountering? Or is it mostly transition challenges once you've decided which EMR to go to, knowing, like Char was saying, right, all of those specifics? What do you talk about in terms of what you need to plan for?
Yeah, we're encountering the challenges after we've decided, like, okay, like it seems like this is a good way to go, but now let's start looking at all these details, and then you start finding little little gaps.
Yeah, absolutely. Does that resonate with the rest of the group as well? Is that what you're finding too, is just figuring out how to even plan for a transition to make sure it goes smoothly? All right, radio silence.
So Sarah, I have a clinic that is still sitting on the fence. They're using Wolf, and they have asked me if there are numbers or percentages of clinics, because they want to see which clinics are on AVA, what percentage on CHR or MedAccess.
I'm sure we can get an idea. It's always hard to know from a clinic level, but let me reach out to our team just to see if they have some data on there. We might even need to get those numbers from the EMR vendors, but yeah, absolutely. I'll see if I can get that for you. Yeah, is there anything else that you think your clinics are needing in terms of challenges choosing a new EMR or transitioning to a new EMR? like Char, I'm not sure if it's possible. I mean, this might be a lot of work, but that clinic that shared their experience, I don't know if there's some quick bullet form or points that you could share with the group.
I think I could. I'm just drafting an email to them. They actually put together, I think it was a slideshow for us. So, and they did confirm that it was okay to share everything in their experience. I don't think they were as honest as I was today with you. But I am just going to ask them if it's okay if I share on that chat.
That's fantastic. Yeah, thank you.
I have some notes that I don't even know if they're usable, but I'll look at them. And if they are, I will share them as well, just for anyone who is going through this transition.
That's beautiful. Thank you. And maybe what we can do is we'll share that. And then if anyone has any tips to add to that they've had from their clinics, we can make a really comprehensive document. And of course, the clinic and your PCN would get recognition for that as well. We would just post it.
Again, I don't know if this makes, my notes don't seem to make any sense to me, but I'm looking at them right now. So I'll see. I'll email you after the meeting.
Yeah, that sounds perfect. Yeah, anything you can share is good. So that's great.
Thanks.
Thank you. And I'm just reading a comment from Amanda. So it says, it depends on the clinic or on if the clinic is physician owned or business owned. If it's a smaller business or physician owned, I see they're switching to AVA with the cost being lower. Yeah. And there's word of mouth going around about these issues with CHR. So I think the physicians are hesitant to choose it, let alone any other EMR. Yeah. And that's the problem, Amanda, right? Is both AVA and CHR are such new EMRs. It's hard to know what they'll look like in the future, right? So, and I know that we've talked a lot about CHR and AVA, but there are other ones, right? Like there's Accuro, there's HealthQuest, there's MedAccess. I'm not going to mention PS Suite just because it's such a specific EMR to certain needs. That is an option as well, though. So absolutely, I totally understand those issues. And so that's where I would say joining those other user groups can be really helpful, right? To answer those specific questions that clinics have and those uncertainties. And I know, I wish I could give you an answer of this is going to be the best EMR for your clinic, but you can't, right? There's no EMR that's going to perfectly suit the clinic's needs. So sometimes it's just making a decision, whether that's money-based. And I know AVA, yes, it is lower cost, but there is still that risk, right? That their costs may increase in the future. So yeah, it's a bit of a gamble. I totally agree. Yeah. And probably a little bit scary for some clinics. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So you know what, like some clinics I know are deciding to go to MedAccess because they say, well, I want to stay with TELUS, right? Because transition costs may be lower, that kind of thing. And then maybe later switch to CHR once they're more established. So I mean, there's different options out there too, right? So, but then that means going through 2 EMR transitions. So yeah. Yeah. And I mean, if you ever run into, if there are clinics that are truly, really struggling, then reach out to me and I'll see if I can get someone from our team in touch with them just to give them some advice. We can't advocate for one EMR over the other, but we might be able to put them in touch with someone who has answers to some of their concerns there. So yeah. I know, I feel for clinics. It's not an easy time for them. Yeah, no worries, Cheryl. And that goes for anyone in the group. If you ever need anything, I can try to link you to someone who has more information. This is a bit of a stark, like suddenly, oh, we're switching to something totally different. I won't go through this in detail just because we do only have 5 minutes left, and that's totally fine. I know I had way too much stuff in this slide deck, and I'm glad we got all this discussion. That was, I think, very useful here today. So I just wanted to quickly remind you guys that there is this new form here for DynaLife. And so it does include this comprehensive CBD risk evaluation here, which is really helpful because I think, as we all know, putting Framingham risk scores in Wolf is not the greatest in terms of trying to pull them back out and know who's had one done and who hasn't. So just reminding you, this form is in Wolf. If it's not in your Wolf instance, you probably need to do an update, but I'd assume you all have it in there. So just make sure your physicians know that this is available now to use. And I was going to put a screenshot of what the lab result looks like when it comes in, as well as a potential search, right? So if you're wanting to create a rule to find out who still needs one done. But I work with a sandbox, and so I don't get labs in my EMR. So if anyone's able to send me a screenshot of both the lab results as well as what a search might look for that lab result, that would be much appreciated. Just note when you're sending me the lab results, just black out any patient information in there. So really the name of the lab is what's the most important. So that would be much appreciated. So thank you in advance if anyone's able to do that. If not, that's okay. I'm hopeful that you guys can figure out where the lab is and how to search for it. But yeah, just an ask from the group if possible. Okay, so again, new Ava User Group. First user group meeting is February 1st, 2023. If you don't have that invite in your calendar, make sure that you email networks@albertadoctors.org. And make sure that you sign up for that user group as well. And if you're still having issues, I'm always available. So send me an email. I get emails about this all the time. So that is no problem at all. And new discussion boards. So if you're having trouble accessing the new discussion boards, look at the December user group meeting recording. So Barb had some awesome slides in there. She went through how to actually access those discussion boards and some of the issues with them currently that we're trying to get figured out. So I'd say refer back to that because that is going to be a really good venue, especially for some of the things we talked about today, right, in terms of transition challenges. So if there's any questions you have for the group or any questions for me, you can always post in there. I'm checking regularly, and I'll make sure those questions make it to the rest of the group as well. And we'll skip through all of these. Okay, so that was really quick. So we do have our next webinar on February 9th. So note it is a Thursday. So a bit of a change there. We had some issues coordinating with one of the other user groups. And I'm just wondering, we don't have a topic for that user group, but would it be helpful to continue some of the discussions we had today, do you think? Talking about CHR, AVA. I think we can throw a Curo in there too. There's been lots of questions about that as well, and any other EMRs that you have questions about. Yeah, seeing some thumbs up there. Okay, perfect. Wonderful. So Christine and I will do that. I'm sure Christine will be running a lot more of the meeting next time. So look forward to that as well. And I'm sorry we had to rush through the end. I see it's 1. You probably have other things to get to. So thank you so much for today. This was really valuable conversation, and just be ready with any other questions or updates that you might want to share next time. So thank you, everyone.